What's up, everybody? Welcome in. This is FST Fantasy Sports Today. My name is Matt Striker. His name is Joe Pisapia. We're already having a great time. Thanks for stopping in. This is your place if you're just ready to dominate. Whether it's season-long fantasy, we've got you covered, no matter your record. Still cashing in DFS? God bless you. We're here for you. Straight up wagering, we've got it as well. Joe, my friend, it is always good to see you. The conversations are going to be plentiful today. I hope you and all of yours are doing well. I know a lot of people right now are in season-long fantasy. Some people are struggling. We're going to help them. We're going to talk waiver wire, but also from a wagering standpoint. I feel that about 60% of the wagering community is enjoying an uptick, and I really hope that they're playing with the house money. How you doing, my friend?
I'm good. And much like the fragrant Sex Panther, 60% of the time it works all the time. So
right.
That's I believe that's the new SportsGrid motto. I think that's the tag
is
we're
that
coming
what we have
out
to
with
say
in a couple
every
weeks.
sixth?
It might be playing. It might be playing in the next sizzle reel. It's possible, but yeah, it's been a crazy week of the NFL. Lots of injuries, a couple buys, and a few trades, which is not something we typically see at this juncture in the season. It's something we've seen more in the NFL in the last few years for sure. I would say in the last 5 years, all of a sudden the NFL trade deadline was actually something. In our youth, when Matt and I used to have to get on the internet and then someone couldn't use the phone in our house, we didn't have NFL trade lines where big-time players. You remember that. You laugh now. And other people watching us going, what are you talking about? Why couldn't I use the phone? I would just have it in my hand. No, because we had landlines and you were on the internet. Nobody could use the phone for a couple hours, whatever that is. But nobody got traded in the trade deadline. Nobody of relevance, too, especially in fantasy. Well, that ain't the case anymore. And this week we had not one but two big deals in the NFL, so we have to break them down from the perspective of winners and losers. Let's start with the big Davante Adams trade to the New York Jets. Boo, boring, of course. This is where he ended up. Aaron Rodgers, general manager, quarterback, maybe part owner of the New York Jets at this point. I don't know. But at any rate, he gets his favorite toy back, so Garrett Wilson now becomes an asset that needs to be more efficient, potentially, in order to get you fantasy points. Davante Adams still has a lot left in the tank, but he is not quite, I would say, the Davante Adams of old. In his first matchup he's going to play in this week, he's going to get Joey Porter Jr., who's one of the best corners in the league. So this could be a tough situation. We're going to talk more about the Steelers throughout the show because, as the kids say, I've got all the feels about that situation for sure. And my discontent, to put it mildly, with that situation. But back to Adams. You know the target volume is going to go up. You know it's going to be improvement from whatever he was playing with a quarterback for the Raiders. But this notion that somehow we're going to get back into the DeLorean and it's going to be like 2020 again, I don't think that's going to happen either necessarily. So we've got to start to, look at our expectations, realize in PPR leagues the target share will go up, realize that, again, certainly he's going to have some touchdown equity in this offense. I think the big winner here is probably Breece Hall over the long run because now you've got two very viable wide receivers. You really, have to pull attention to the secondary. And now that allows, Breece Hall, I think, to roam free a little bit more. So this is probably the best for him as long as they actually turn and handle the football like we did last week. And as you saw when you changed the play caller, and that's all that Robert Saleh wanted in the first place, which is run the football more, get Breece Hall the football more, and hopefully better things happen. But look, Davante Adams is there now. Matt, your thoughts on Davante Adams now a Jet? Is this going to be the boon that all the people waiting and managing Davante Adams all these weeks with his quote-unquote hamstring issue are now going to be still relevant and happy that they held on?
So, all right, let's open up the conversation here. At SportsGrid, at SportsGrid TV, those are our social media handles. Join in. So I'm on the other side of this, Joe. I think this is absolutely fantastic. I think it's a great landing spot for Davante Adams. I think from a wagering perspective, a lot of wagers, a lot of windfalls going to start to come back in on the Jets. Before the season started, I think a lot of wagers understood that the Jets were going to be a focus for them. And then the kind of wheels fell off. What do I do with these assets? What do I do with I've lost? Now the Jets are back and they're different now. So I do believe as a collected unit, the Jets are going to be fun to watch, fun to wager upon. With regards to who suffers the most, Joe, do you think a guy like the kid, Braylon, do you think that's the guy that's maybe the odd man out here? And he's just been so exciting, been a bright spot for the team as well.
Well, Mike Evans is going to suffer the most because Mike Evans is now persona non grata. He fell down that big moment. Again, of course, he ran the round. Of course, nothing is ever Aaron Rodgers' fault. So Mike Williams is going to go by the wayside.
Okay.
Allen Lazard might get hurt.
I was thinking, was there another trade I missed? right?
No, well, he wasn't practicing this week, so let's put it that way. But I would think also that Alan Lazard, another loser. Now, Amari Cooper also on his way out. So Cleveland making some interesting moves here. We thought Amari Cooper might be on out there, and he was on the block. And the Buffalo Bills went out there and got their guy. And I kept saying that, the Bills should have been on the forefront of Devontae Adams, but I guess Adams just clearly wanted to go to Aaron Rodgers and doesn't care about the chaos in that organization, whereas the Bills are in first place. The Bills just beat the Jets again, and the Bills are now in a situation where they can cruise to this division, and getting Amari Cooper is important. They tried with Keon Coleman and Khalil Shakir and Dalton Kincaid and all these other pieces, right? And it turns out in the NFL in 2024, you need the alpha dog. You need the big-time guy. You need the guy that's going to step up and make big plays. And yeah, Amari Cooper can be a bit of a boomer bust player, especially at this age. 24 catches, 250 yards, 2 touchdowns on a pretty bad Cleveland Browns team this year. But Amari Cooper gets a new lease on life. Also, when it comes to Amari Cooper, if you look at the schedule coming up here for him in the weeks ahead, very favorable. And I think that is something that really is going to matter in terms of him getting comfortable in a quicker way with the offense, understanding the playbook, getting up to speed. I don't know how much in terms of snap share he's going to get, but if you think about, they got Tennessee this week, then Seattle, Miami, Indianapolis. Those are 3 great matchups for Amari Cooper. I would be aggressively buying Amari Cooper because I think he would be a cheaper addition than Devontae Adams with all the hype and all the media attention, whereas the Cooper deal and the matchups the next 3 weeks, I think, are far more favorable.
Yeah, no, it's a great point. It really is, especially from the everyone's looking over here, let me pivot over there. But let me move it to a wagering standpoint. I was beginning to enjoy the Shakir and Coleman combination, understanding what they were doing. Also, in one of my leagues, Shakir was kind of like a streaming option. I saw him constantly being picked up and taken back again. So this only muddies the waters. And I find myself at this point in the season as a wagerer, I want to stay away from these muddy waters, these uncertain things. I know it's an evolving, growing league, but at the same time, I like to be comfortable. I'm just ahead. I'm making a very small notion with my fingers. I'm playing with house money. I want to keep it that way, Joe.
Yeah, look, I understand, the excitement there for both of these teams and both these organizations getting these big pieces. This is the piece that was really missing. And Keon Coleman had some drops and some issues here. I don't want to give up on Keon Coleman. In fact, in dynasty leagues, I might be buying him right now because I think people might sour a little bit. He's got a lot of talent. He's got a lot of ability. But right now, this is a now team for the Buffalo Bills. They need to continue to push that narrative. And they tried. It didn't work. I'm glad that they were aggressive out there in the market. Also in the news this week, unfortunately, end of season for a couple guys. Rashid Shaheed was at a breakout season for the Saints. The explosiveness of Shaheed in the first 2 weeks was one of the big stories of the NFL. Unfortunately, him and everybody else in New Orleans is hurt, and unfortunately, Shaheed out for the year. Also, Aiden Hutchinson on a gruesome injury last week. This is a huge loss for the Detroit Lions. He's going to be out for months with a broken tibia. Gruesome injury, too. If you're squeamish, don't watch it, folks. Don't go to the internet and go watch it if you don't like that kind of stuff there. It makes you a little queasy. But a huge impact here. We're going to see some rumors that Hassan Reddick may be a trade target for the Detroit Lions. They need to replace him somehow because without that pass rush, that Lions defense is not going to be the same. And then today we got a huge rematch here of the Super Bowl. And guess what? Patrick Mahomes is an underdog. Now, if you watch this show back in January into February where Patrick Mahomes was an underdog and we kept betting him every single time he was an underdog, we made a lot of money. And guess what? You could do it today. You could take the points, Chiefs on the money line, and you could also go ahead and take the under, which I know people are like, under? Why would you want to do that? Yeah, maybe take the under in this game. Chiefs off a bye, Andy Reid off a bye, more time to prepare, and Patrick Mahomes is the underdog. You can get almost 3-1 on that when you put that all together today. Just going all in on the Chiefs because, let's be honest, the 49ers can't put teams away. When we come back, we're going to talk about the booms of Week 7 in the NFL. Don't go anywhere. FST is just getting started.
can't sometimes look at the point spreads and just, understand what they mean. Because going into the game, you're looking at it, it's like, okay, Denver's playing better football. They won a couple in a row. Now they're going back home.
The Broncos have to turn around and play on a short week. Sean Payton is returning to New Orleans. The Saints just gave up almost 600 yards of offense to the Buccaneers. So it's going to be interesting kind of gut check.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
But if you're playing the odds and you're looking for something that is a more favorable opportunity, it seems like Bo Naylor doing nothing tonight and just watching paint dry is a good investment.
I'm assuming he's in the bottom 3 or 4 of their lineup, which also puts him at risk to be pinch hit, which is great if you have that under. Gets up once or twice, and all of a sudden later in the game, they pinch hit for him, and then you're just free and clear.
Game time decisions, only on SportsGrid.
That kid on the 2-point conversion play was wide open on the right side of the end zone, and the kid threw it about 15 rows over his head.
People crystallize Georgia and Alabama. They put them on the shelf above everyone else, and they're just not there this year. I thought the kid Beck was great on Saturday, but they barely beat Mississippi State, who is porous.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
All right, welcome back into FST Fantasy Sports Today. Matt Striker and Joe Pisapia. This is the spot if you want to dominate. Joe, I understand you have breaking news. What do you have?
Well, we just mentioned Hassan Reddick, and basically over the break, apparently the Jets and Hassan Reddick have found a path. He heard Russell Wilson was playing, and he said, well, I want to get in on that. But all jokes aside, he is not going to be available this week, most likely. So, but look, it's a good move for the Jets. It was a good move when they acquired him in the first place. So Hassan Reddick, one of the better pass rushers in the league, a guy that had huge impact for the Philadelphia Eagles in their playoff runs recently. Finally getting a deal done. Just 7 weeks into the season? That's all it took, Matt. So hopefully he is in shape. Well, but here's the thing. Hopefully he's in shape, and we'll see what his snap counts are as that goes, because you and I both know when these guys don't have the normal regiment, the normal training camp, things don't always go well in terms of soft tissue injuries and some other issues. But certainly on paper, at least, a good move for the New York Jets. So that you can bank, and you can also bank some of these guys in week 7 we're going to talk about coming up next. I'm excited for this group, including an actual revenge narrative.
All right, let's do it. Let's get into some booms, and we'll keep our wagering eye on some of the Jet totals as the weeks move on. That defense is still tight, man. All right, let's go to Atlanta and Seattle. You see that there is an opportunity in a game script that will contribute to a particular player's fantasy boom. Walk us through it.
Yeah, look, I think when you're looking at Kirk Cousins and what he's done the last couple of weeks, he's really just getting confident with his offense. He's got a lot of pieces to work with. Mooney and London, Pitts. He's got the 2 running backs. I think Kirk feels like he is really finally in command of things, and I really like him against the Seahawks. Now, some people will be off of this and think it's a little bit of an oppo play, but I think this total could actually really surprise people and go well above. Geno and company can certainly match them score for score, especially because the Falcons, unfortunately, haven't put enough pressure on the quarterback. That was the whole point of, acquiring Matthew Judon in the offseason here, was to try to fix that issue, and it still hasn't quite been fixed yet. So Geno's going to have some time in the pocket. So is Kirk Cousins. I think this could be a fun one. He's going to spread the ball around. He is somewhere around QB 12 in most rankings this week, and on the Fantasy Pros expert consensus ranking, I think that's where he is as of this morning. So he's a guy that you should be starting, and I think he has a pretty good opportunity here to have a good game against the Seahawks in a total, again, that I think is going to hit the over.
All right, now the revenge game to which Joe alluded. Here it is, Joe. So take off your shoes and socks and get ready. Who do you like and why?
Well, look, the revenge narrative, is just so overrated in some of these things. In the fantasy community, especially the NFL community, maybe even more. But every now and then, there becomes a special moment in time where you actually get the player in the building for the first time in the big revenge narrative, where that player is playing at their peak performance, and it should be really fun. And it's Saquon Barkley against the New York Giants today. The Giants have some injuries on the defensive side of the football, But Saquon, certainly if you watched Hard Knocks, I was talking to you, before the show, I said one of the most amusing moments ever in Hard Knocks is when Mr. Mara is in Joe Shane's office telling him, Saquon Barkley, maybe we should, do our due diligence there, do everything we can. It's like, oh, okay, I trust you, Joe, but just don't let him go to the Eagles. And of course, where did Saquon Barkley go? He went to the Eagles, folks. And he gets this opportunity to come back home, quote unquote. And he's playing at his peak. And I don't see a scenario where Saquon Barkley does not smash this week. He has definitely got something to prove. He was a great Giant despite all the injuries, and a guy who played through a lot of injuries and pushed himself maybe more than he should have. And sometimes unfortunately, his performance suffered for it. But I love the prop today for 2 touchdowns for him, plus 400 you can get on Saquon Barkley. His original number for yardage was well into the 80s, and then it got bet to the under a bunch. So now it's actually dropped down. We'll talk about more in hour 2. But I love this scenario for him today. He's going to be super expensive in DFS, maybe chalky too, which is kind of an interesting thing when that happens. But Saquon is in a smash spot here today. I think he's going to get the football a ton. I think the Eagles, get on track here a little bit against the Giants in a very important in-division game. And with Malik Neighbors back, I think a situation too where the Giants might actually keep pace and make this game a little bit more entertaining than people realize. But I am all in on Saquon this week against the Giants in MetLife.
Yeah, I agree with you. Saquon, anytime touchdown is always a part of something good. And it's funny, in my time in WWE, the locker rooms could always be, joyous places, whatever. I remember there was a night that Bobby Lashley was sitting quietly while everyone was partying, whatever, and he had a big match coming up. I remember just thinking, wow, what a kind of guy just being in the zone. I feel like Saquon Barkley is just going to be sitting quietly in that locker room. His teammates are going to be glaring over at him. They go, what's going through his mind? What's he going to do today? So you're 100% right, and I'm eager to see that. All right, let's go to another running back here at Buffalo. An opportunity here, but not the way you'd think. Talk to us.
Yeah, look, I think with the Buffalo Bills, the thing we keep in mind is the same thing we talked about last week. Now, if you watched last week, we talked about Breece Hall and the Buffalo Bills and how the Buffalo Bills give up more points to running backs, more receiving yards to running backs than almost any team in the league. And if you bet the over on that, like we talked about, and even the over on the rushing total too, things worked out pretty well for you. And it's the same thing with Tony Pollard today. Mason Rudolph's going to play quarterback today for the Tennessee Titans. I think that's an improvement over Will Levis. Almost anything's an improvement over Will Levis. So you're in a good spot here today with Tony Pollard, especially Tajay Spears banged up too. It's a relatively low number. I love Pollard today. And going back to that Giants game too real quick is Malik Neighbors, who back healthy through the concussion protocol. A great opportunity today when you see what he's been able to do in terms of the target volume too. That is something that's been really astounding here with Daniel Jones. He just gets absolutely peppered with targets. Before that injury, if you actually even with that injured game here, week 1, a little quiet, 7 targets, then 18, 12, and 15. I mean, this is a guy that makes a huge difference. And if you're looking for some overs, even for touchdowns, plus 130 on Malik Neighbors today, a good chance he scores against that Eagles secondary, which frankly is not very good. And they're not going to be able to stop Malik Neighbors because he's healthy again. And Daniel Jones with Malik Neighbors, again, a guy that's, played like a QB1 in some of those weeks. He's had some rushing equity. So I think this might actually be a pretty fun game between these two teams, but make sure you got Pollard in your lineup. Saquon's going to be in your lineup. If you're looking for a QB on that fringe of QB1, Kirk Cousins is that guy. And thank goodness Malik Neighbors back healthy after missing a couple weeks. When we come back, week 7's not going to be great for everyone, unfortunately. So who are the guys that might underperform in week 7? We'll tell you. So don't go anywhere. We've got that all lined up for you and a whole lot more. We're going to look to the future. We've got a London game this morning too with some fantasy pieces in that. Look for Drake May again with the over on the rushing total, and also Mario Pop Douglas, 4.5 receptions. Let's go over on plus money on that too. We come back, the busts of week 7.
can't sometimes look at the point spreads and just, understand what they mean. Because going into the game, you're looking at it, it's like, okay, Denver's playing better football. They won a couple in a row. Now they're going back home.
The Broncos have to turn around and play on a short week. Sean Payton is returning to New Orleans. The Saints just gave up almost 600 yards of offense to the Buccaneers. So it's going to be interesting kind of gut check.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
But if you're playing the odds and you're looking for something that is a more favorable opportunity, it seems like Bo Naylor doing nothing tonight and just watching paint dry is a good investment.
I'm assuming he's in the bottom 3 or 4 of their lineup, which also puts him at risk to be pinch hit, which is great if you have that under. Gets up once or twice, and all of a sudden later in the game, they pinch hit for him, and then you're just free and clear.
Game time decisions, only on SportsGrid.
That kid on the 2-point conversion play was wide open on the right side of the end zone, and the kid threw it about 15 rows over his head.
People crystallize Georgia and Alabama. They put them on the shelf above everyone else, and they're just not there this year. I thought the kid Beck was great on Saturday, but they barely beat Mississippi State, who is porous.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
All right, welcome back into FST Fantasy Sports today. During the break, oddly going off on a conversation about the hats of our grandfathers. And I just remember, my grandfather had a hat with a bird feather in it. So there was a time when men wore
you can get away with that.
coats. I'm not talking about baseball hats and things like that, but the times are changing. But it's funny because it's a great tie-in. I saw in college yesterday they did the painted throwback helmets, and I thought that they looked great. But I also thought the concept of returning to leather helmets would really mitigate a lot of the problems that we see with the physical nature of football. And with that said, let's go to who is in line for Fantasy Bust this week.
I want to know
Joseph?
more about this, the Hats of Our Grandfathers series that's coming out on Netflix in 2026. Like that sounds like a very exciting Netflix series. The Hats of Our Grandfathers, the new Steven Spielberg project. You could actually get away with that, I think. The hat with the feather in it. I think you're just like, I kind of feel like Matt Striker at the beach. His 2 kids, playing in the sand. Yeah, but you got your little hat on with the little feather. I feel like you could pull that off, buddy. I think you've actually hit the beginning stage of that hat. Just want to say, Christmas is coming. Hanukkah too. I got you, boo.
Oh gosh, please pick up this segment, please.
All right, let's talk about things that are not good, not like Matt's hat, which is going to be spectacular. Fantasy busts of week 7. I'm officially over Kyler Murray. Enough. It's very frustrating. He's ranked QB 14 this week for a reason. He's on the outside looking into the top 12 QBs, and it's the inconsistency. I know he's QB 10 on the year, but frankly, it's just the up and down nature of him that's been so frustrating. The rushing equity has been all over the map. Some games you get 80, some games you get 3, and that's incredibly frustrating. In the last 3 weeks, he's only gone 200 yards passing once. I don't know why he refuses to just hammer Marvin Harrison with 12 targets a game like Daniel Jones does with Malik Neighbors. I don't understand. Do they not like each other? Do they not have breakfast together like Cooper Kupp and Matthew Stafford? There's a lot of questions I have, Matt, about why Kyler Murray has not lived up to his abilities here. And he's getting the Chargers this week. And the one thing about the Chargers is they're a well-coached football team. Jim Harbaugh is going to have that team prepared, and that defense is going to be ready to prey upon the weaknesses of Kyler Murray. Now, Marvin Harrison Jr. is playing this week with a concussion. He cleared protocol, so that's good news, as long as Kyler Murray remembers he's on the field. And he's got some viable weapons. I thought that maybe, just maybe, this team would be the anomaly this year. I remember in the beginning of the season, we talked about that, right? Yeah. We talked about the ecosystems. And when you go back and look at that, if you go look at the ecosystems, if you drafted accordingly to those ecosystems, you're probably loving life right now. And if you ignore them, you're probably hating your fantasy team where you have 1 or 2 wins at most. And the one that I circled is this could be the anomaly. I'm going to tell you right now, I feel like I'm just wrong already, and it's week 7. And it's the Cardinals. They've just been incredibly disappointing for the talent that they have on offense, that they haven't been able to put it forward. So, again, Kyler Murray at QB 12, I think you can make a case easily this week, especially off the bye, for Mahomes over him in the same range. I think Jared Goff over him. I even think Drake May might outscore him this week. Jacksonville Jaguars give up a ton of points to QBs. Look what Caleb Williams, a rookie QB, did to them last week. I'm not saying he's got the same weapons here, but I'm saying is Drake May with his rushing equity and what he did last week, I think might be able to surprise people today.
All right, let's pivot now to a pivotal matchup in the AFC. The Jets and the Steelers. So much to unpack in this game, but let's drill down here on a fantasy bust.
No, there's nothing worse than a Steelers primetime game, is there? 13-10 all over the place. And the Jets, too.
No.
So two teams that are going to play defense, and it's going to be grinding and sucking down the play clock and all that stuff. And then you're adding Russell Wilson into this, which, again, this whole situation just boggles my mind. But we'll dig into this a little bit more as we go. But Najee Harris today, again, I think with Jaylen Warren returning last week, I expect him to work a little bit more. At this point, like Najee Harris had that one big run and it made up a big day for him, but you can't depend on that every week, especially against a defense like the Jets. So I don't love the matchup today. I don't think it's the best one for him. You're probably running him out there anyway because RB is a wasteland, especially RB2. But I don't think you can run him out there and feel great about it today.
All right, continuing with AFC talk, big game implications here. Indianapolis and Miami. We have to start thinking about it as the season moves into its midway point, how these games really matter. Who stands out to you here as a bust, Indianapolis versus Miami?
Well, I love the talent of Michael Pittman, but him and Anthony Richardson have not really been on the same page so far, and he has been dealing with that back injury. He played through it last week. Tough guy. He did not really practice this week. He is going to play in this game, but I just don't like the matchup here for him. I just think he's in a bad spot with Richardson and the health, where I think I'd be pivoting to guys like Christian Watson this week, who is, just about 50% rostered in leagues, but I think is nuts right now. That guy's got so much talent in a much better quarterback situation. So Pittman, I'm a little low on, but there's some guys we're really high on when it comes to daily fantasy. We'll tell you who right after this.
Can't sometimes look at the point spreads and just, understand what they mean. Because going into the game, you're looking at it, it's like, okay, Denver's playing better football. They won a couple in a row. Now they're going back home.
The Broncos have to turn around and play on a short week. Sean Payton is returning to New Orleans. The Saints just gave up almost 600 yards of offense to the Buccaneers. So it's going to be interesting kind of gut check.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
But if you're playing the odds and you're looking for something that is a more favorable opportunity, it seems like Bone Nailer doing nothing tonight and just watching paint dry is a good investment.
I'm assuming he's in the bottom 3 or 4 of their lineup, which also puts him at risk to be pinch hit, which is great if you have that under. Gets up once or twice, and all of a sudden later in the game, they pinch hit for him, and then you're just free and clear.
Game time decisions, only on SportsGrid.
That kid on the 2-point conversion play was wide open on the right side of the end zone, and the kid threw it about 15 rows over his head.
People crystallize Georgia and Alabama. They put them on the shelf above everyone else, and they're just not there this year. I thought the kid Beck was great on Saturday, but they barely beat Mississippi State, who is porous.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
All right, welcome back into FST Fantasy Sports Today. And folks, like I always do, I bring the conversations the team have in the break, I bring them forward to you. And I was just straight up telling Joe Pisapia how in life, in my time in WWE or working in movies and film, you come across some talented people, but 8.5 out of 10 people have some kind of crutch, whatever it is. Well, they study or they use a substance or they have a. Joe Pisapia is one of the few people that I've ever met where there's no strings at all. This is a guy you could just put out there and know that he's going to do it right every single time. And it's not just adulation for you, Joe. It's the fact that it's helping people like me in our wagering, in our season-long fantasy. Just, you're not coming out here with scripted material. You're having conversations. And I think that's what's important. And it's see-through to me that you're real and you're personable. So let's talk about these DFS plays without the strings, because a lot of times, a lot of people have hidden agendas for whatever the reasons are. But you're coming straight, you're coming real. Let's talk DFS.
Well, first of all, Matt, thank you. It's very kind of you. And second, yes, Matt does get 10% of every paycheck of mine. He is officially my manager, my agent. So I make sure that I pay him every first of the month for him to continue to say nice things about me. The running backs this week in the DFS department, Saquon Barkley at the top. Of course he is. Why? Because he has massive touchdown equity this week. So if you're in a half PPR scenario like on FanDuel at 9K, you want to roster him. He's also got a lot of just point equity. So it's going to be tough to squeeze him in lineups because of the price. It doesn't mean it's wrong. If you want to game stack this one too, you run Malik Neighbors back on the other side. You don't play Hurts with Barkley because that's dumb. You're just going in on Barkley. If you want to go against Barkley, that's when you play Hurts with somebody else. Like you're playing Hurts with A.J. Brown and you're staying away from Barkley as a complete pivot and just going contrarian in that nature. But if you have Daniel Jones, Malik Neighbors, Saquon Barkley, that's the stack you need in this game if that's the one you want to make work. Kyren Williams is about as consistent as you could possibly get. This guy scores touchdowns every week. He is just unbelievable how good he's been. And I have to say, I was a little skeptical going into this year about Kyren Williams. You know, can he repeat what he did, the foot issue in the offseason, the chronic foot issues in the past? But he has proven that he is just an absolute stud. And Kyren Williams, another guy, 8,600, a good value. Ken Walker, a little bit of a health concern here today at 7,500, but I'd rather pivot down to 7,100 with Tony Pollard instead. I love Pollard. We mentioned earlier, the Buffalo Bills gave up the most fantasy points to running. This is one of those rare instances, too, where you know, last year, if you were with us in the show, we had, you know, we very carefully ladder bet on this program. And last year, we ladder bet that one giant game that HN had, and we made a ton of money off of it. The number was too low. The opportunity was huge. And he smashed our expectations, right? We thought, okay, well, let's go up to 100 something. And then he went up to almost 200. It was crazy. This is a spot kind of like that, where the market's kind of soured on HN. He hasn't been great. The offense hasn't been terrific, but the Colts defense is dreadful. They're coming off a bye. He's rested. He's ready to go. He should get a full workload. There's very little competition at this point between Wright and Mostert. If those guys work a ton today, that tells you HN really isn't healthy. But if you anticipate HN being healthy, this is a smash spot for him to go well over his props. You could ladder bet it through 100 because I think his explosiveness against this weak Colts defense will be something they exploit. And at 6,900, he's one of the best values on the board today.
So you think that top number is 100? If when you talk about wide receivers next, I want to go to my app.
I think you can get through that. I think if you go through to some of these games there and you do the alternate rush yards, I can give you those lines on that when we come back from the wide receivers. But I think there's money to be made there. Simply because he's so explosive, Matt. Again, we don't bet the attempts, just like typically we don't bet the receiving. The receptions. You want to look for the yardage. You want to look for explosive players with lower than expected yardage totals, like Tyreek Hill, like Devon HN in this game. Because if you can get that, one or two plays put you over. You've already cashed, and that's the way to look at it. From a fantasy perspective, I know people are, concerned about HN. It hasn't been what they wanted. It hasn't been the great return on investment yet. You're hoping that Tua Tagovailoa is coming back soon. If you get that, that's a good thing for this offense, clearly. Alternate rush yards for him, looking at it right now, for him to be at, at 50 yards plus 104, already plus money. HN 60 yards plus 164, 70 plus 240, 80 plus 350, 90 plus 490, and 100 plus 680.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Good talk. Good stuff talking us through it also in real time. I'm trying to put together something. I don't normally endorse parlays, but sometimes a lot of these houses give you these little boosts and bonuses and rewards. Something with Saquon Barkley anytime, something with Tony Pollard reception, and something with Devon Achane.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe we can have this conversation. All right, let's talk wide receivers here from the DFS perspective. But again, it opens up a larger conversation. Jefferson starts at 9,400. Malik Neighbors is right behind him at 8,300. And then there's Tyreek Hill at 7,900. You were talking about an over in Tyreek Hill. What was it, yardage? I think it was one of those options.
Yeah, over on the yardage on Tyreek Hill. Again, it's a low number. We'll talk about that more in hour two. But at 7,900, he is a sweet spot. Like, there's a guy that's normally up at 9K, right? So you're getting more than $1,000 discount on Tyreek Hill against the Colts. I know it's Tyler Huntley, but he has shown you he's ready to take some deep shots. They just haven't connected. More practice time, more time with the playbook, a week off, everybody healthy. This is a good spot here for them. The Colts defense has been dreadful. Justin Jefferson against the Detroit Lions is about as good as it gets. 8 games this year, in his career against the Lions, he has smashed them. We'll get more about that too in hour one. Love Neighbors today, especially in full point PPR leagues. I'll pay up for him, but you got to find some discount guys. Darnell Mooney at 6,300 on FanDuel is a good investment. I like that one a lot. And Christian Watson at 5,900 carries a lot of touchdown equity too. He is a big playmaker. Jaden Reed a little banged up. Dontavian Wicks a little banged up. I know health has been the issue for Christian Watson his entire young career so far, but there's no denying in terms of talent, he is the best raw talent on this wide receiver roster. Jaden Reed is the most productive fantasy guy, but Watson is the big play guy, and I think he could have a big play today against the Houston Texans.
All right, let's go from wide receivers to quarterbacks. We start with Jaden Daniels. The anytime touchdown is always in there for me. 9,100. That's a big number. Then you got Jalen Hurts. Do you still apply this 3X kind of expectation when you look at these prices?
You want to, which is why you want to pivot down a little bit. Geno has a chance to do that today against the Falcons, especially if they fall behind, which you want. That's what you want. You want the game script to go Geno's way, which is you want the Falcons to put up 10, 14 points early in this game, make Geno throw the football because he's thrown the football a ton this year. And then Daniel Jones, another guy, 3X could be in this mix. When you have Malik Neighbors, Daniel Jones, I know it's not always pretty, folks, but it's fantasy points. And that's okay. You know, the rushing equity is there for him. The touchdown equity goes way up on Malik Neighbors on the field. He's getting Singletary back and Tracy back. This could be a much more competitive game than people realize. The Eagles have kind of underwhelmed, and Saquon Barkley's got something to prove. So this one's got a little bit of juice to it. Cousins, Smith, Daniel Jones, that's kind of where I want to live at quarterback this week.
All right, and for those that are new, the 3X system is to multiply the price you pay for the player by 3, and the result is the point total that you're hopeful to achieve. All right, tight ends, George Kittle, 7,500, Travis Kelce, 7,100. And by the way, that usually applies for quarterbacks, not for tight ends. I don't think George Kittle is giving us 21.5 points today, but you never know.
No, if he has to get 3 touchdowns, probably to do that. But, I mean, that's George Kittle, right? It's a 2-touchdown game or it's 7 points. So you kind of just throw your hands up with him. Brock Bowers will continue to get the bulk of that work. Jacoby Myers is a game-time decision, I believe, now at this point. So, again, no Devontae Adams. Like, Brock Bowers is the weapon X in this offense, whatever's left of it for the Raiders, which is not great. Travis Kelce off the bye. I like that. A little bit of rest for Travis Kelce. Everybody saw him at the Yankee game there, rooting on his Cleveland Guardians, who fell short last night. Tucker Kraft at 5,800. I think the sneaky play of the week is David Njoku at 5,300. It's risky. This is a tournament play, but with vacated targets in that Browns offense and how bad that Cincinnati Bengals defense has been, David Njoku, Elijah Moore, Jerry Jeudy are going to have more target share to work with. And Njoku has, proven that when you give him the football, good things happen. I would love to see them force that ball to him a little bit. The only problem is the guy trying to throw him the football is Deshaun Watson. Now, we can hope that Winston takes over at some point. Maybe this is the beginning of the end, but I kept thinking that last week, and I was wrong. We come back, more FST. Let's make some trades.
can't sometimes look at the point spreads and just, understand what they mean. Because going into the game, you're looking at it, it's like, okay, Denver's playing better football. They won a couple in a row. Now they're going back home.
The Broncos have to turn around and play on a short week. Sean Payton is returning to New Orleans. The Saints just gave up almost 600 yards of offense to the Buccaneers. So it's going to be interesting kind of gut check.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
But if you're playing the odds and you're looking for something that is a more favorable opportunity, it seems like Bone Nailer doing nothing tonight and just watching paint dry is a good investment.
I'm assuming he's in the bottom 3 or 4 of their lineup, which also puts him at risk to be pinch hit, which is great if you have that under. Gets up once or twice, and all of a sudden later in the game, they pinch hit for him, and then you're just free and clear.
Game time decisions, only on SportsGrid.
That kid on the 2-point conversion play was wide open on the right side of the end zone, and the kid threw it about 15 rows over his head.
People crystallize Georgia and Alabama. They put them on the shelf above everyone else, and they're just not there this year. I thought the kid Beck was great on Saturday, but they barely beat Mississippi State, who is porous.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
All right, welcome back into FST Fantasy Sports today. Matt and Joe with you here, giving you everything you need. We got Luke and Jake, and it's the great crew behind the glass. During the break, the guys were giving me a hard time. We're about to do buy low, sell high. So they were obviously making fun of me when I walk around Home Depot and stuff like that. But I love it, man. And you just have to be super careful, though. When you're out there trying to shop for something, don't go into these stores, these trades, anything with a specific intention. I think that's the difference here. So we go to buy low, sell high. Take a look at this first buy guy. You were talking about this player early on in the season. I picked him up. Nothing was doing. He had some injury issues, had some quarterback issues. He's available on my waiver wire. Now, all of a sudden, here he is available again, probably at a better price. So I think this is smart. Let's talk about this particular wide receiver first in the buy low, sell high category.
Yeah, I think that when you're talking about, expectation for rookies every year, it's a little tricky, because you just never know how these guys are going to play. Some guys play great, some guys not so much. And with Ladd McConkey, this was a matter of assignment, right? He was going to play in the slot. Slot receivers typically are great PPR investments. They get peppered with targets, right? And so far in the year, he is only right now wide receiver 51. That's kind of underwhelming, right? We look at that. But I think there's opportunity here because nobody else has really stepped up. And I like the trend line of where we're going. The last game we saw him against Denver, he got 8 targets. Now that's a season high. And the other thing you think about too is with some of these rookies, you see them hit the bye week and then they start to peak after, right? So he had the bye week in week 5. He comes out of that gate, 4 catches for 43 yards. Okay, well, that's another, decent 8-point day, whatever, like to be in the double digits. I think as you look ahead here, Arizona, New Orleans, they're going to have a Cincinnati down the stretch there and a couple other good matchups. I think Ladd McConkey is going to emerge. I think he's a piece you could probably get on the cheap right now. So I would be acquiring him. Palmer has had injury issues. He can't stay on the field. Quentin Johnston's had a couple, splash moments. But I think this is the kid who's going to every week now start to garner a little bit more of that target share. I like him this week too. I think he's in a good situation here against the Arizona Cardinals. And I think that Ladd McConkey is one of these smart buy low investments, truly a buy low, because again, wide receiver 51 isn't exciting. He might even be, as Matt said, in your shallow leagues on the waiver wire. People might have dropped him after the bye week because it wasn't happening and they needed more bodies to play, especially with the injuries we've had in the NFL so far. But Ladd McConkey, I think, is one of these players that if you invest in him, I could see the last 8 games for Ladd McConkey being far more productive than the first 8 or 9. And that is a trend line that these are the deals you make. They might not be the sexiest deals. It might not be just acquired Devontae Adams or Tyreek Hill. But sometimes it's the Ladd McConkeys, especially now that he's past his bye week. They can really help you because we have some major bye weeks ahead of us, 12, 14, where you're going to have a ton of teams on bye. And a guy like Ladd McConkey is going to be very valuable.
It's a great strategy. It really is. Let's continue the conversation here. Still talk wide receivers. Now, you mentioned Devontae Adams. Garrett Wilson was the one. Now he is the 2. I think you'd agree. But he's not a 2. He could be a 1 for a lot of people. Is Garrett Wilson a good buy low target?
Yeah, I think there's just such unknown in the marketplace with him and frustration for people who drafted him as a first-round pick. And he really hasn't delivered on that yet. And now that Devontae Adams is there, I think the fear is people go, oh, no, Garrett Wilson now, he's trash, he's terrible. He's not. He's a very talented guy. And now he's going to see a lot more single coverage, which makes him very dangerous. He won't see most likely the same kind of target share. You're not going to get 14 targets a game for Garrett Wilson. But I do think he can be more efficient with that single coverage, where if he gets 7 or 8 targets a game, he might be more efficient with touchdown scoring. He might be more efficient just throughout the season. So I would be looking at him right now and think that there's a real opportunity for, I think, Garrett Wilson to start to show, especially in dynasty leagues too, where you're always looking for buy lows and good situations there. So Garrett Wilson is a buy for me in redraft and in dynasty leagues too. You don't know who's going to be the quarterback next year of the Jets, but regardless, Garrett Wilson, I think with the Devontae Adams trade, his stock is at its lowest. And just on principle, I want to buy, because maybe he does end up somewhere else next year. Maybe he doesn't want to be here at all. Who knows?
In the early portions, the early weeks of this show, Joe, you were mentioning some running backs to stash, and back and forth we went. And now if we go to Pittsburgh, it really seems like some of these things are starting to emerge. You have a sell candidate in Pittsburgh who seem to be in disarray, but we'll find out more in just a few hours.
Yeah, look, again, Najee Harris has not been great this year. The offensive line is not good, and my fear is going to get exposed a lot more here as we pivot to Russell Wilson for this game. Why we're pivoting against one of the better defenses in the league to a quarterback who takes a lot of sacks when an offensive line isn't good. Justin Fields has covered up a lot of the sins of this offensive line when you watch the tape. And I'm just gonna this is keeping it real here. This is just Justin Fields has a higher EPA per play than Patrick Mahomes, a higher success rate than CJ Stroud, a higher CPOE than Josh Allen, and more rushing touchdowns than Saquon Barkley this year. How is he not playing? I don't know, but it's not necessarily great for Najee Harris and Jaylen Warren coming back too. That combination to me, look, RB's a tough sell anywhere right now. You want all the RBs you can have, but this is a situation where I think the name value might bring a little bit more than he's worth. So I would kick the tires on it.
All right. With the time that we have left, let's get the conversation going, especially on social media here. This sell high candidate, I think you're going to ruffle some feathers, but take it away, Joey P.
Well, let's throw up Devontae Adams. He is an older wide receiver, right? He's been in the league more than 10 years. We see sometimes that not always work out. It's funny. Everyone thinks that it's going to be great, right? Let's, like I said, go back in the DeLorean and Marty McFly can get with us and everything's going to be fine. And maybe it will be. But this first matchup against Joey Porter is not going to be an easy one. The offensive line for the Jets is not good. Aaron Rodgers has not been great. It's the same playbook, so he's familiar. So he should be able to step in quicker than, say, an Amari Cooper and just understand the language. He's played with Rodgers forever. I get it.
Right.
They're just going to play schoolyard football a little bit. However, what I'm curious about is, can you take this buzz? Can you take all of this hype around Devontae Adams? And can you turn it into, with another player, a buy on Tyreek Hill, a buy on CeeDee Lamb, guys who are elite and in their prime? Because Devontae Adams is not in his prime anymore. That is where this conversation comes into play. I'm not rushing to get rid of Devontae Adams, but I wonder if Devontae Adams and J.K. Dobbins gets me Tyreek Hill. And if it does, then that's a move I'm going to make, especially with Tua looming possibly on the return. There's some buy lows right now. Tyreek Hill, CeeDee Lamb, that could really make an impact down the stretch. Whereas Adams, Aaron Rodgers might be past their prime. We come back, more FST, a deep dive on the Minnesota Vikings.
can't sometimes look at the point spreads and just, understand what they mean. Because going into the game, you're looking at it, it's like, okay, Denver's playing better football. They won a couple in a row. Now they're going back home.
The Broncos have to turn around and play on a short week. Sean Payton is returning to New Orleans. The Saints just gave up almost 600 yards of offense to the Buccaneers. So it's going to be interesting kind of gut check.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
But if you're playing the odds and you're looking for something that is a more favorable opportunity, it seems like Bone Nailer doing nothing tonight and just watching paint dry is a good investment.
I'm assuming he's in the bottom 3 or 4 of their lineup, which also puts him at risk to be pinch hit, which is great if you have that under. Gets up once or twice, and all of a sudden later in the game, they pinch hit for him, and then you're just free and clear.
Game time decisions, only on SportsGrid.
That kid on the 2-point conversion play was wide open on the right side of the end zone, and the kid threw it about 15 rows over his head.
People crystallized Georgia and Alabama. They put them on the shelf above everyone else, and they're just not there this year. I thought the kid Beck was great on Saturday, but they barely beat Mississippi State, who is porous.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
All right, welcome back into FST Fantasy Sports Today. Matt and Joe with you here. We hope you're having a good time. Stick around, more quality programming coming on. I mean, honestly, every single show back to back to back. The insight isn't the same. That's the problem I have with watching a lot of talking head pundit shows, is everyone kind of has the same script. What I like here is that we have different people with different opinions. Can you imagine that? Different opinions. But I think one thing everyone can agree upon, Joe, not only is your greatness, it's the greatness of Justin Jefferson. Especially when he plays the Detroit Lions.
Far greater.
Take it away.
Far greater. Yeah. Justin Jefferson, far greater. Look at these numbers here for his career. You love when big-time players show up in big-time spots in these in-division games that mean so much. And, it's funny because the Vikings are the undefeated team, and it seems like they get very little respect, right? Sam Darnold is their quarterback. But they're coming off the bye here, and the Detroit Lions don't have Aiden Hutchinson. I think this is going to be an incredible football game today. But look at Justin Jefferson. His 8 games against the Detroit Lions in his career. 8 games. He has 1,073 yards receiving in 8 career games against the Lions. 62 catches, just 3 touchdowns. You think you would have more touchdowns on it. But absolutely just crushing. Now, look, all that's come with Kirk Cousins, okay? But Justin Jefferson's been pretty darn good, too. If you look at some of the props that are out there for him today, it's hard not to like the receiving yardage over. I mean, I just don't know how we get there, but you look at some of the alternate receiving yards we did with Devon Achane. I think there's a ladder bet to be made with Achane, especially since everything from 50 yards and above is all plus money. One big run from him, like one 60-yard run, all of a sudden you are well within reach of making a lot of money for the rest of the game against that Colts defense. But let's take a look at this one too, because when you have Justin Jefferson here, it's a little bit higher of a total, right? 80 yards, you start at minus 168, 90 minus 118, then over 100 plus 118, over 110 plus 160, and then plus 245 for 125. So there's an opportunity here. Again, it's a little bit tougher. The numbers are bigger. But at the same time, Justin Jefferson's track record against the Minnesota Vikings, Matt, is undeniable.
All right, so I love this conversation that we're having here, and I love because I have my app open right now. What would be the best way in your mind for someone out there to take advantage of what you think Jefferson, Achane, Saquon, Pollard, these guys are capable of? Now, I normally do not endorse parlays. Let me say that, unless your house is offering you one of these, crazy boosts or whatever. But how would you approach it? How would you approach it with these particular players?
Look, I think the safer thing to do with Jefferson today is take the 2 minus money things that are kind of mid in the minus money there. Justin Jefferson over 91.5 receiving yards, which, again, if history tells us anything, that's a lock. And then he hasn't had a lot of the touchdowns necessarily against them, but if you get a kind of volume, eventually touchdowns just typically follow. Anytime touchdown score plus 170, you put those two things together. That's a nice, easy day at the office. I can't tell you how many times on Betting Pros that we've done these duo bets with the wide receivers. If you like them for the over on the yardage, just put it with the touchdown. You bet them separately, but you put them together as well. And when you do that, it makes for a huge day if those hit. We've hit it on numerous Thursday nights there with Jamar Chase, CeeDee Lamb, a couple of those big guys. So it's a great way to approach it when you find like the wide receiver you like the most. Tyreek Hill, another one today. Touchdown scorer, over on the yardage. Put them together as well. That's a great way to just kind of say, I think I know the narrative here of this game, which is this guy has a big day. And if that's the case, then that's how you bet it. And I think the same can be said for Pollard today. The same can be said for Saquon today. There's a lot of opportunities in the betting marketplace to take some of these fantasy projections and use them to their limits and use them successfully to make some money off of them. And the one other note, too, is I think your biggest fear with Sam Darnold was potentially Aiden Hutchinson. Well, that's gone now. So he's going to have a little bit more time in the pocket. So I am far more comfortable, and I think that Vegas is telling you they're comfortable, too, of Jefferson having a big day, because this is not something like 85, 86.5. This is 91.5 for Jefferson. So they're kind of telling you, like, there's a big day possibly coming here when you don't have that same kind of pass rush, when you let Sam Darnold sit in the pocket, make good decisions. He's going to make some good decisions there. So I think that is part of it. I want to get to the Steelers thing real quick, too, Matt, because I want to put this out. I know we kind of touched on this earlier. So you're in conference game here with the New York Jets. If you should lose, you put Russell Wilson in, he does not perform well. Let's say he takes sacks. Let's say it doesn't go well for Russell Wilson and Fields can't pull them out in the packages they put him out there. All of a sudden, doesn't this put you in a weird spot as the season goes on, you get close to tiebreakers in the conference? Doesn't that bother you just a little bit?
Yeah, honestly, I think they're shenanigans. Remember, I come from the pro wrestling world, and I hate to be nefarious about this, but it's put Russell Wilson out there and let him get dinged up so that I have an excuse to not play him. You had mentioned that there was some type of thing in the contract that kicked in if Justin Fields took a certain amount of snaps. All of this stuff to me is just wild, Joe.
Yeah, the sixth pick becomes a fourth-round pick if Fields takes one. You're the Steelers. Win games. Come on. Hour 2 coming right at you.
Sometimes look at the point spreads and just, understand what they mean. Because going into the game, you're looking at it, it's like, okay, Denver's playing better football. They won a couple in a row. Now they're going back home.
The Broncos have to turn around and play on a short week. Sean Payton is returning to New Orleans. The Saints just gave up almost 600 yards of offense to the Buccaneers. So it's going to be interesting kind of gut check.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
But if you're playing the odds and you're looking for something that is a more favorable opportunity, it seems like Bo Naylor doing nothing tonight and just watching paint dry is a good investment.
I'm assuming he's in the bottom 3 or 4 of their lineup, which also puts him at risk to be pinch hit, which is great if you have that under. Gets up once or twice, and all of a sudden later in the game, they pinch hit for him, and then you're just free and clear.
Game time decisions, only on SportsGrid.
That kid on the 2-point conversion play was wide